Coming straight for your ears and for your soul, we have here the most popular $500 amplifier on the market today. This is the Singxer SA-1 Class A version 2 full balanced headphone amplifier. Too many words for such a simple title. The Singxer SA-1 version 2. There are some differences between the version 1 and the version 2, differences which I cannot explore because I never reviewed the version 1. From Singxer I only had the SA-6, which was a DAC/headphone amplifier, but today we will explore what the SA-1 does. It doesn't play like a harmonica, that is not something it does, but it is a high quality headphone amplifier, preamplifier, balanced and unbalanced. Of course, being unbalanced is not a great thing, but it has both inputs and both outputs. At the back we have a power input, we have an on-off switch. We also have an analog output which is both XLR and RCA, and we have an analog input which is both XLR and RCA. We also have a large cooling slit at the back and cooling slits on the side, so the unit is made so that it won't overheat. In actual usage I noticed that it doesn't run quite that hot, but I wouldn't place it above something which is already hot. I would give it some space on the table for itself. On the front we have three switches, one which switches between the headphone amplifier, preamplifier or off, which turns it off. We also have an XLR/RCA switch, and we have a switch which selects between high Z or low Z. This is an impedance switch. For some headphones which have a high impedance, it is a good idea to engage the high Z switch. It will give you better bass, a more clear sound, and a higher amount of dynamics. For a low impedance headphone, the switch set to low Z will give you the best sound possible. We have a volume wheel which is fully analogic, and everything inside of this amplifier is fully analogic. This is why it's full class A. And we have an XLR balanced output, 6.35mm single-ended output, and 4.4mm balanced output. This covers every single ground for everyone. So starting with the most obvious question, I don't know how it sounds like compared to the version 1. So starting with the most obvious question, what are those four switches on the bottom? No one doesn't mention them anywhere. I could not find any kind of information about what those are. So like a good experimentator that I am, I turn them on and off. They are gain switches per channel. So two for the left and two for the right channel. If you switch them on and off, you'll notice that you get a lower high gain. To the right you have the high gain, to the left you have the low gain. And you have to turn all four to the same to get the high or the low gain. It's interesting that we have this and no one mentions this, but it works. And there is no need to mention something that just works. So this is a full class A headphone amplifier. This means that it gets hot during usage, but it's not unbearably hot. For example, a A-1 S17 Pro would get much hotter to the point where it couldn't really run at its maximum output power. But the SA-1, it's modest in how hot it gets during usage. I prefer using the balanced headphone outputs. There is no difference between the 4.4mm and the XLR balanced outputs, obviously. Also, there is a difference between using the RCA and the XLR input. Most DACs will sound better over the XLR input. I recommend using it at any point possible. Do not use the RCA input if you want the best quality. For the analog output, once again I would use the XLR output for the best sound. It has the lowest amount of noise and the best control, also the best channel separation and the best resolution. The RCA input and the RCA output are single-ended. There is quite a noticeable degradation in sound with most DACs, as most of them are designed to sound better from the balanced output. Using it as a preamplifier, because I can connect it to Ketch's S300, which is very sensitive to noise, I noticed zero noise. If the DAC had zero noise, the SA-1 has zero noise. The unit has zero self-noise. So it doesn't matter how loud it is turned, it doesn't matter what it is plugged into, as long as the source doesn't have any kind of noise. So if it is not coming from the DAC, the amp is quiet, dead quiet, zero noise. With EMs you may notice some noise because some EMs are ultra sensitive, but with most EMs I noticed zero noise as well. There is a chance that with some campfire EMs you may notice a bit of background noise, but it's not noticeable while music is playing and it doesn't grow with the volume. So it's an independence mismatch, not necessarily a unit self noise. It's important to notice that there is a big difference between the circuit being noisy and the impedance mismatch creating the noise, because when it's impedance, the noise is static, it doesn't depend on the volume, while if the noise changes with the volume, then it's a circuit noise that can't be solved. It's a problem. You can't really use an impedance adapter and it will be present with all headphones and all EMs. Moving forward, the unit has very solid rubbery feet on the bottom. Those are screwed in, so it has some distance between it and the table. It also has a cooling area at the bottom where air can go into the unit and it can cool off the components, then it can exit on the sides. Of course, you won't feel that there is no active fan on this side, but you just have to know that the airflow idea was designed pretty well. I have used a couple of DACs with it, including Catch's S3+. There is also the HiFi Prelude, which I've used quite a lot because I like the sound of the Prelude. But with every single DAC, it was quite quiet. There is no background noise noticeable, and it tends to prefer a brighter DAC over a warmer and a smoothing sounder one. This is because the SA-1 version 2 is the most relaxed, smoothest, and the most refined sounding amplifier I have ever heard in my entire reviewing career. If you're looking for absolute smoothness, like butter, silk, anything that's smooth in this world, this is going to be. The SA-1 is basically pure smoothness, it's pure oil. There is no edge in the sound, although it does have a good resolution and a good detail. So it doesn't really kill the dynamic range. There is no dynamic range compression, but the sound is so incredibly smooth. It's unique. You get 10 watts of power at maximum for the lowest impedance, but you really won't notice that because you can turn the volume to the maximum. This is how smooth it is. You never hear aggression in the sound. You just hear pure smoothness. It's smoother than silk actually. It's just in a class of its own for how smooth and how relaxed it sounds. This means that you get a much less edgy and a much less aggressive sound. It doesn't combine that well with rock and metal because it will sound really smooth, but it does combine quite well with stoner rock, old rock, even with doom metal at points, but heavy metal, death metal, no, that's a no-go. It works well with pop because most pop isn't made to sound aggressive and to sound fatiguing. It sounds quite natural, relaxed, laid back and smooth, full, rich, anything that you would expect to come from a tube amplifier. If you never heard a tube amplifier, you will get from the SA-1. While a tube amplifier tends to sound a bit distorted in the mid-range and typically pretty bright and sharp, SA-1 sounds exactly as you'd imagine tube amplifiers to sound, like magnetic tape. If you ever heard magnetic tape, this is how it sounds like. I'm not talking about tape for tape recorders, but magnetic, the thick and black one, which you had on rolls. It's a pretty dead technology. I mean, it's long been dead, but it sounds analogic. It sounds fully analogic, like vinyl. If vinyl tells you something, then this is how SA-1 sounds. It makes every single headphone smooth, full, and deep sounding. The sound is incredibly deep. It has a voracious bass, a huge amount of bass, a warm bass. The mid-range is also warm, so it tends to emphasize with the male voices over the female voices. The upper mid-range is not very emphasized, while the treble is pure smoothness. It is not necessarily rolled off because there is air and presence, but it's super relaxed. It's laid back. It's forgiving. It will forgive every single sin you have ever made in your entire life. This is the unit that will forgive them all. Doesn't really like to keep an enemy. It likes to make friends. And this is how the sound is. It's friendly. It's absolutely friendly. If you're recording, then if you tend to listen to recordings with a lot of mistakes, then you'll hear none with the SA-1 version 2. Everything is just pure musicality, pure smoothness, pure insanity. It's insanely musical. This would typically be a negative, so I would not use those words necessarily to compliment it if it wasn't so good at the resolution part. For $500, it really sounds revealing and detailed. So despite being so smooth, it has a good amount of technical ability. That technical ability is at times overshadowed by the rich and silky sound, so you will notice the richness and the smoothness of the sound, the warmth and the bassiness of the sound much more than you will notice the technical resolution. You never think to yourself, oh, this has such a good resolution. It just doesn't come to your mind, you know. This is not how SA-1 sounds like. The SA-1 version 2 really sounds delightful. It's like drinking the thickest hot chocolate ever. It's a super satisfying sensation, you never get tired of it, but it's an acquired taste. If you want something that sounds neutral, that reproduces the signal faithfully, then the SA-1 will likely not be it. It doesn't reproduce the signal as it is, it reproduces its own version of a beautiful story. It's like listening to music while you are incredibly happy. This is how it sounds like. It sounds like pure happiness. I listen to a lot of rock and to a lot of metal, so my personal listening taste doesn't really match with this smoothness and lushness every single time. But in discovering that I like stoner metal quite a lot with the SA-1 version too. You know, bands like and other stuff, even Pink Floyd sounds beautiful through it, Queen, all the rock in general tends to be emphasized by this type of signature. It tends to sound really beautiful. While newer and more recent music tends to not work that well with such a rich and smooth sound. At the end of the day, I hope I bring you all the info that you needed, all that desire for knowledge should be satisfied when you are watching Audiophile Heaven. If you want to support our channel, you can donate, subscribe, like this video, and use the links in the video description when purchasing those products, because we do get a dime every single time someone does. To those to whom this would make a better day, I hope that it really does, and I hope that everyone watching this video and everyone out there has the loveliest week out there, that you live a life full of love, and that you'll be as happy as music sounds through the Singxer SA-1. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see each other really soon. Bye!